What's up, duelists? Before we get into the subject of today's video, I just want to do a little preamble. This is one of the most scuffed deck profiles I've ever recorded, honestly, but it's a really cool deck profile. There's a lot of different parts to it. There's a lot of different segments that we shot for this, and you'll see why in the video. We're on our way to 10K. If you haven't already subscribed, in any case, I hope you guys enjoy. Leave a nice comment for Roghnach down below. He has put so much time into this deck. So it's with my greatest pleasure that I'm able to feature it here. See you guys in the vid.
Whereas I like looking at myself.
Yeah, what's up, duelist? Sorry, I started it while you're... what's up, duelist? I'm here with Roghnach. He's here from Ireland. This weekend was crazy. We had the IRL RBET, and then yesterday you won a Nintendo Switch with the same deck you entered the IRL RBET with. Mausoleum Frog. Let's take a look at that. We're in the middle of a park. We're in an amphitheater, folks. You see the amphitheater. You see the we're making it work. All right,
great time. It's a frog moment.
I can't even tell if it's showing up right. That might be it. Oh my god, this deck is gorgeous.
Yeah. Well, it's kind of like what we were saying earlier. The people you surround yourself with, they show you what's possible. And
this is so scuffed. I can't even tell what's being shown on this. Oh my god. Okay. Let's just go through it.
Yeah,
I think we got
cut whatever out. It's fine.
We can't cut any of this, dude.
No?
It's
Okay,
going
okay,
up raw,
okay.
uncut, unfiltered. There we go. Beautiful deck. Okay, there it is.
Cool.
Perfect. Walk us through. Tell us a little bit about it.
Nice. Yeah, where was I going with it? Oh, yeah. Well, this is pretty directly inspired by KFC, as popularized by Carpath. So you clearly see all of the Gear Town stuff.
This is such a scuffed deck profile. Should I just be shooting this on my phone?
Yeah, we can.
Maybe I'll just shoot it. I'll just shoot the second part on my phone. Part two of the sickest deck profile you've ever seen. This is Roghnach's Ancient Gear Frog deck. We're recording it in a park. It's a windy day. He's got the frog hat on. Fire. So walk us through these cards. These are some of the sickest cards I've ever seen in my life.
Yeah, you might have seen the list that I brought to Cameron's tournament called Edison World Championship Qualifier 1. So this is a list I got 12th place with that, and it's a list I've been developing for quite a while. That one had Kurazes in it. This one's got Mobius. The idea here is there's a few different concepts. There's first of all the fact that you want to have a lot of extenders, which this does really well. People love that in Hero Frog. People love the idea that you have your Monarch, you get rid of their stuff, you bait out the removal, and suddenly they're left with a really open field for your Absolute Zero. That's great, right? So then we have Gear Towns. We don't just sometimes have one extender, we got multiple extenders. We have the fact that we can play without Treeborn. And I think that's a really important thing for a Frog deck to be able to do.
Absolutely. Especially with this bad boy right here. You were telling me you would play 5 of this card if you could?
Literally, yes. Yeah. By far the best card in the deck. Yeah.
Show it off a little bit. The drip, the retro pack. Gorgeous. They all have like an incredible bleed on them. You yourself are a big collector of the game. Tell me a little bit about a lot of these cards that you've collected. A lot of these are miscut, misprints, very rare to find type cards.
Yeah, that's kind of like the whole point of a real life deck profile, right? Like to show off random
throws it on
stuff.
The floor. Like, yeah, show it off. Exactly.
This card was going on the floor. Like we were trying to record this and the wind was throwing it to the ground.
Exactly.
I paid like $200 for that.
God damn. That is sick though. You can see there. Miscut, names off center, German, very rare stuff here.
Yeah, yesterday actually, like at both of the tournaments, in fact, they had crazy stuff. They really are into the game. They really want like the best stuff.
Yeah, dude.
And it really shows. It does have that intimidation factor when you really have someone who like clearly has been in the game for a while and like has taken the time to get all the best stuff.
Yeah, it's like, oh, this guy knows his stuff, because like you wouldn't spend $8 million on a deck unless you knew the deck inside and out, basically.
For real.
Yeah, exactly. So, tell me about your matches. Tell me a little bit about your tournament performances. Something you were happy with, something you weren't happy with. Just give me like a brief rundown while we have you here in America.
Yeah. Okay. Well, so the PS5 tournament started out with me versus. Well, this was cool actually. I played against this guy Jose. And he was on Lightsworn, like I'm saying as well. He had like a million cool things in his deck. He had like the shiny Judgment Dragon and all the high rarity stuff. And Lightsworn is a hard deck to build build high rarity. Because everyone's in on that. And like you kind of have to have had it for a long time, and he did. So like he was a really good player. And so unfortunately that game, like I opened like this guy as I'm not even kidding, I opened him every single game. of the tournament.
You should play 3. I heard that if you play 3 of something, you'd never draw it, and if you play 2, you draw it all the time. Right?
I'm so afraid to try that.
Hey, I'll run the numbers for you. I'm pretty sure that's mathematically accurate.
Speaking of which, actually, like, I'm really proud that this deck performs so well despite drawing this constantly. And you'd imagine like that's such a bad thing, but like honestly, like a lot of the times it was a really good thing that like they would have an open board because they're like afraid to get Kai's or something, and it's just like, okay, fine, I'll like tribute some of this using Gear Town or something, and just like swing for them.
Yeah, and then like if you get him into play early enough, like before they have their bottomless, before they have their torrential, he just goes unanswered. He ends the game like really fast. Like you play him first, and then the next turn you Mausoleum out Lad. They can't even pop him with Raikou. They can't pop him with Phoenix Wing, whatever,
well,
etc.
The crazy thing is,
etc.
I don't know what you're talking about next turn for, because it's always like, you have this and this, plus Light and Darkness Dragon.
Yes.
You just get out like this instant combo that says answer me or lose.
Exactly.
You do 58 to the face, and if they can't get rid of it, which they probably can't, then they just lose.
Yeah.
And they can't stop with anything.
Yeah.
And that's like, it covers up a lot of what Gijiltron is afraid of, which is like Raikou's, Recruiters, traps, bottomless, all that kind of stuff. You can actually just bait out the bottomless and like swing with that anyway, and it walks for free. Like they just combine so well in so many different ways. I can go into that in detail, but let's talk about more of the other stuff.
Yes, of course.
What I like about this deck list is a few things. Like I said, more extenders, the freedom to play without Treeborn, the fact that you kind of have that second turn play of just like swinging into them and like not having to wait for normal summon Treeborn, bounce, normal summon Monarch, pass, all that kind of stuff.
Exactly.
Yeah, so you can go like really ham on them really quick. Like there's a couple of games where I literally just like had this plus a Treeborn plus 2 field spells, and you literally just like summon this, pop their back row on your field, get one of these, and then kill the other one, boom, and then
yeah,
you win.
There you go. Yeah. All you have to do, well, you would set the first field spell first, right?
Yeah, whatever the sequence
whatever
is.
the sequence is.
Yeah,
it's 8,400 damage, and there goes that $800 Kai's.
Damn, like
the wind is crazy. This is the worst thing we could have done. No, but it's cool. It's cool. This is a fire deck profile. Don't forget to smash like and check out Roghnach. Roghnach, do you want to plug anything like social media wise? Like, is there anything that you want people to find you on, like a Facebook group or something? Because you have a lot of these like really sick cards that you're constantly like dealing with, I guess.
That's true. Yeah, like I have a binder full of stuff that I brought to the event. So I have like a lot of rarity stuff that I'm selling to Americans, because, for example, I gave Keegan this cool Jinzo. I have another copy of it, that kind of thing. Like the old high rarity stuff, first editions, ghost rares, ultimate rares, secret rares, champion pack stuff, like random funny things that people like the Senior Super Ammo.
People love those, dude. Those are such a hit here.
Yeah, like all this random stuff that people like people don't want to spend a lot on that. Like I can do it like half the price or whatever.
Yeah, for the non-English versions.
Yeah, mostly just like looking to get rid of this for whatever price.
Yeah.
Like
so where do you normally sell cards if people want to like find you or check out what it is you're selling or whatever? Do you have like a?
Yeah, I sell on Facebook mostly.
Okay.
So like literally my username Roghnach is in my name, so you can find me there. Roghnach Newton.
Roghnach. It'll be in the title. You guys can.
Yeah, you'll see me around. I mean,
Yeah,
I have claim sales. I have like auctions and stuff.
Yeah. Lots of cool stuff.
Yeah.
Lots of cool stuff. But yeah.
You got the idea.
Back to the deck.
Yeah. So yeah, I built this deck for months and months. There's been like 50 maybe drafts of this, and like I've tried a lot of different things. There's going to be like more drafts to come, but as it stands, I'm really happy with how it performs. And like this card was the MVP. I like having be able to run triple soul exchange. I think that's one of the best cards to be able to have.
Yeah, that card's nasty, especially with like these. Sometimes I've found when I play soul exchange, I'll soul exchange for Caius, and then they won't have another target for the Caius.
Yeah.
So like it's nice to be able to like soul exchange, sack their last target because they're scared of Caius, right?
Yeah.
And then
one of
just
those
drop
cards
this.
that like you don't have to rely on your opponent to do anything. Like you just do your own thing, and they gotta catch up to you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You were also saying like it's like one of the best cards in the metagame right now.
It really is. Like I'll be real. Like at this tournament, people didn't know very well how to play around it, which does make a difference. But at the same time, like I have played against players who like know to, for example, like post side like DD Crow Chainlink 1 and then Chainlink 3 bottomless, for example, to like play around this and kill it. I don't care anyway. Like I'm naturally playing around that in the first place, and you can certainly bait this out to begin with, get rid of their back row first before playing this. Like you can always just save this for later. There's a lot of plays you can do first, especially with Gear Town.
Yeah, you open them up, you open up the position, and then you drop a lad like fairly easily, either with Mausoleum or Soul Exchange, once they're like weakened up, and it's usually enough to just crush them.
Yeah, another thing I like is this stalls the game out for a while, which lets you gather pieces for one turn kill. These guys combine pretty well because like you can Treeborn, you can special summon the gear dragon, and then tribute these guys for Lightning Darts Dragon, which is great because then later you get to bring this guy back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it gets you like a more resilient board that's like stickier, harder to get rid of, basically.
Yeah.
I
mean,
like
it
that a
synergizes in
lot.
so many ways. I'm telling everyone who has like a Gear Town deck, I was telling Keegan, he's like big into Ancient Gears. I'm thinking like this is the next direction for an Ancient Gear deck. I was telling Carpath because he's like obviously big into KFC. He's like the guy. So I was telling him like if you can find a way to include this into the Mausoleum Gear Town deck, then I think you should. But yeah, like Soul Exchange is great because it lets you go second and not have to lose any momentum. Obviously great with Substitute, but also the fact that anytime I didn't open any frogs, I really did not care at all. And that's the whole thing of this deck. Like a lot of times if you're playing Hero Frog, you have a really slow start and you might have to go like Stratos Prodigy, which is fine. But at the same time, like I can totally win without Treeborn.
Exactly. Because
Yeah.
you have those OTK setups, you have that Mausoleum Gear Town kill setup.
Yeah.
You even have like something like Gores into like Gear Town is usually enough to just like crack through most things.
Totally.
Which is
and like
pretty
there's so
nasty.
there's random combinations here that just win the game. Like I said, Mobius double field spell or like
This little ant here on your treacherous trap hole, wherever the fuck he is, he powers up the treacherous, right? He
Hell
bites
yeah.
your opponent. You kill two of their monsters, then he bites your opponent. That's fire.
that wins games by itself, by the way.
Dude, that card is nasty. It's
Yeah.
like one-sided torrential. It's
Yeah.
super good.
Like you just bait out everything, like you clear all the back row and they think they got you, and then like this is like a remote control like Roghnach.
Not only that,
fine.
chainable is beautiful. Only downside, you can only play one.
Yeah, and so
That's it.
for all those reasons, like having the faders, having the Soul Exchange, having the Mausoleum and Gear Towns and everything, I don't need the third swap frog. You don't even want it. Like you definitely don't want it.
Yeah, you definitely don't want to be drawing too many of this guy in a
Right.
build that can like kind of support the tributes without it. For sure.
Like the first game I lost versus Lightsworn, I opened only this plus frogs, which is really hard to win versus most decks, which is
Yeah.
unlikely. Like not drawing any of these, not drawing any of those. Like I don't know.
It's very unlucky. It's
Yeah.
very unlucky. But
Which is fair.
you ended up winning a Nintendo Switch, so
Right.
like
Yeah.
you lost one game, but like let's be real.
Yeah,
you
and the
won
game I
Switch.
lost was against that guy Jose, who ended up being in the top 8, and he's so good. Like he's did he end up being top 8? In any case, he beat like most of the other players there.
Yeah, he was.
Including Cameron. Like he beat the first place winner as well. So
Yeah.
he had the best tiebreaker, so I was so grateful for him. And then anyway, so like I moved on to beating. I should have came prepared for this. My favorite
know,
one was
right?
like I beat Gladiator Beast, which was like it's
Oh,
normally
dude.
something like really hard to do and it's a big like grind and it's like a big struggle and you fight against like Chariot and Equest and Retiari and stuff. I'm so ignorant of Gladiator Beast. I do not care at all. This is the best frog deck against Gladiator Beast.
Dude,
by
honestly,
far.
because you just go this thing, activate, and they're like fucked. They just
by
lose.
far, like this guy, like
That guy too.
yeah, he just shits all over it. Sorry, I should say
You're
something
good.
else for YouTube.
No, you're fine. They
But-
don't give a shit. They love it. Cause all you want.
Yeah, like you can't stop that in Gladiator Beast. Like normally, like against Blackwing, you're really afraid to run into a Shura for fear of Kalut.
Yeah.
You don't have to care about Shrink. You don't care about Deep Prison, Bottomless, obviously. But yeah, like you got the point.
And then also, this card right here against Gladiator Beast, checkmate.
Yep.
Checkmate. You go Soul Exchange or Glad, sack it for Caius, banish their Chariot, game over. They can never come back from that.
That's right. And even this like puts in work too. So everything is like very designed for Gladiator Beast. But the fact that I bring up Gladiator Beast in the first place is because this deck it resists not only Gladiator Beast but everything like that naturally counters frogs like Dyna, Rug, Mask, Kaiku, Soul Release, Crow, you name it. Like anything you're normally siding against frogs, it's probably kind of not very good because of these. And so like all day today, I was asking my opponents like, "What did you side in against me? Like, did you know what to side?" And they had no clue. They
Yeah.
were just like kind of guessing. They brought in like Book of Moon or like Dyna or Crow or Rug. They
Let's
just
say
didn't know.
someone just sees the frog stuff game one, they're never bringing in Dust Tornado for this. So like, you can fake them out, you know? It's really sick.
Even deck dev, which is normally a problem. Like maybe I care a little bit for this, but I normally side out like some copies of this.
Yeah.
Especially for like versus Vayu, I'd bring in some Crows instead, which is great to stop them from deck deving.
Yeah.
That kind of thing. So I really I'm so ignorant of like anything. I hate having to lose those random games where you just brick badly and like you don't have a plan because they happen to answer your like really predictable bounce swap normal monarch kind of game plan.
Yeah, they have like a pulling the rug, a tactical pulling the rug or something like that.
Yeah.
Here, you're unpredictable, you're diverse, you've got like the stuff. You want to show us a little bit about the sideboard, like
Yeah.
how you were siding? Let's
I should
break
bring
that
that
down.
up because that's also part of my point I just made there.
Yes,
Which
of
is
course. Got to see the flex sideboard with the ulti crows. Oh my god, this guy, he's on a different level, folks. He's on a different level.
so crows is, I mean, people disagree with me on this, but I don't know what to tell you. Like, this is the best card in frogs in the side deck.
I disagree with you on this,
I
but
know.
you would know better than I do. You want a Nintendo Switch, so what am I saying?
I can name a lot of people who disagree with me on that, but like, yeah, literally, like, this was really great all day, like against Lightsworn, against Vayu, against like.
And we're back. My phone died in the middle of that recording, so we're gonna finish up the side deck part of this on this scuffed angle. But you know what? Hey, let's do it. You got the 3D crows here. You got next up on the sideboard. Of course, you said it's the best card. It just answers all the shit you care about.
Yeah, totally. And like, even like versus like Blackwing Hybrid, it was really good. There's a lot of decks. How much do I have to go into detail? Like, try it yourself. It's fine.
Exactly.
This one's great with Mausoleum, and especially because you go Gajiltron first and then summon this, and so that means like you're swinging for 54 and you prevent their follow-up, so you're really in control that way. And again, it's like you have to answer the board or you lose, so that's great for that. Not only that, but also for the frog matchup and for Fairy Lightsworn, I literally brought a Christia. I was really happy with that. Like, that actually did win me the semifinal game against Frog, because I just tribute summon this guy, like summon this. I know it's a bit extra for matchups like that, because normally frogs are like pretty good in the mirror if you know what you're doing. And I kind of like normally don't care about the frog mirror, but at the same time, like, it's getting really popular. And also, this is so good against Fairy Lightsworn because you can get you can tribute summon with this, and they can't tribute summon their own Christia back, because normally they can use this themselves, the Mausoleum. But this, like, they have to crash against it, pay 2,000, and you're kind of
Magic.
gonna
Yeah,
win.
we're playing a bit of Magic. You want to say hi to the camera? Say hi.
Hello.
Welcome in. Say hi.
Yeah.
This is a home, dude. We're at the park right now.
It's a great park, got great big people. And,
Yeah. Introduce yourself, bro.
great vibes.
My name is County.
County. Shout out County, dude.
Of the park.
Are you from LA?
Yes.
Fuck yeah, bro.
Oh yeah.
Hell yeah, dude. We're just talking through a video for YouTube. You watch a lot of YouTube or not really?
Not really.
I feel it. I feel it.
I don't even really watch TV anymore. Only when I'm locked up.
Honestly?
Yeah.
Based. I don't really watch TV either, bro.
Yeah.
Yeah. Good shit, dude.
Yeah.
Well, we're gonna wrap up this video. We could chat afterwards if you're done.
Yeah. Yeah.
Good shit,
We're
dude.
chilling.
Chill, dude.
Cool.
Yeah.
Hell yeah. Thanks for stopping by, saying hi to the fans.
for sure.
You got fans now all of a sudden.
All right. Cool.
They're
Cheers,
gonna comment about you in the section.
Yeah, they're gonna be like, I love that dude. It was at this point that we decided to go on an adventure with our new friend County, and so the deck profile kind of put on hiatus, and we finished it on Discord and Dueling Book after Roghnach had already returned to Ireland, so that's going to be the next portion of what's happening here. Again, guys, thank you for bearing with me. The most scuffed deck profile of all time, but one of the most powerful decks of all time simultaneously. Enjoy the rest. And we're back. A little bit of a scuffed recording for the IRL deck profile, but you guys saw the max rarity. You get the idea. We're here on Dueling Book screen. I'm joined, of course, by Roghnach. We're gonna go ahead and talk through some of the more intricate things with the deck, just so you guys get a better idea. What's up, Roghnach? How you doing today?
And not so bad. No, we're good. So people have been asking me about a few of the tech choices that I got, because it is quite different from a lot of the usual cards you see in frog decks. And the first one being Mobius. So I have two Mobius, and normally when you see Mobius in a frog deck, it's like a one of, and it's like a really personalized tech choice, whereas this, I'm like really going hard in on it. First of all, I was finding that the Blackwing matchup was getting a bit challenging, and definitely with Blackwings on the horizon for Nats, big time. Probably, like, I don't know what you think about this, but I think it's probably going to be the most represented deck.
I think a lot of players are actually, and I'm gonna leak a little bit of intel. A lot of players are talking about the Gemini deck for Nats. A lot of players, and I've seen some builds from like the top players floating around, like Ultimate Offering. This is a little bit of a leak, but I don't know. I gotta hype it up a little bit in the video. So yeah, that's what I've heard from a lot of top players. So yes, but even in that matchup,
If that's true,
Mobius, right? Pretty good in that matchup. They play a lot of back row.
Yeah, I mean, even if that's true, Mobius is definitely great. But I was gonna say, like, that definitely would explain the what is it now, like $300 price tag of Ultimate Offerings, something crazy like that.
Yes.
So you pop Gear Town, you immediately go swing for damage, and that's a lot different from having a Kuraz and just like waiting a turn and only having the Giltron to swing with. Whereas here, like, you can just walk over Rykos and be like definitely either doing damage or keeping a Giltron for later. It has that other conundrum of like giving the opponent a dilemma. So whether they want to leave an open board or like like lose to Caius, lose to like enemy controller and stuff, or if they want to just like pack all their back row in and like really play against the Gajiltrons and not lose to MST or something like that. So if they do that, then they're going to play into Mobius really, really hard. And that happened a lot at the event, that I like just randomly dropped a Mobius on them that they weren't preparing for, especially if I'd already used my Heavy Storm. They were just completely not prepared for that. And Mobius swinging through a bunch of different back row really, really clears the way for Light and Darkness, as well as for Gajiltron to really put a lot of pressure down the opponent for later. Also, of course, the fact that it's water, as Keegan mentioned earlier, that's really great actually. If your hand is like packed with tribute summons, you can actually discard the Mobius to like get a Caius going or something like that, which is totally fine. Yeah, so that really helps you play without, or if you're like behind, or if you're like going second or something, that's also fine. So yeah, people are definitely commenting on my faders and definitely saying like, hey, wait a minute. Weren't you like the biggest advocate of not playing faders in like all your other decks before this? Yeah, totally, I am. And in normal circumstances, that's definitely my position on fader. I'm definitely not a big fan overall. But in this deck in particular, it's got a lot of things going for it. Previously, I had the Korazes, and that went exceptionally well with faders, of course. Even without the Koraz, I definitely find that it's the card that I find to be just the best in this scenario. Because first of all, obviously Light and Darkness Dragon, getting them to commit all of their things into a fader and then dropping a Light and Darkness Dragon is really strong. It goes really well with like, for example, if you have like an enemy controller as well, to really like take control of all the stuff that they've committed to the board. Also on the topic of enemy controller, I've changed my list. I sent Keegan this like list of just to show on the screen. I already changed -1 Darkness Spirit for +1 enemy controller, in case you're confused.
I've got one question for you.
Now.
I've got one question for you. So, well, first things first, I do want to touch on Mobius real quick. I don't know if we mentioned this in the earlier part of the profile, but I do think it's really sick that if you have double Gear Town plus Mobius, that's an OTK. That's really cool.
For sure.
And then
that happened even in one of the games. Yeah.
Yeah. The other question I was going to ask for you is like, is part of the reason you're on triple Battle Fader because sometimes you have a field spell down and you just need a tribute fodder because you can't bring back your Treeborn anymore? Is that part of the reason you're playing 3 Battle Fader in this?
Absolutely. Now you're getting it. Yeah. So there's things like that are very specific to this build, as well as also the fact that we just don't really have a lot of space for all the best traps. So I actually like having the flexibility of just having the Treacherous Trapple as well. That is a card, as I mentioned earlier, that like just steals games out of nowhere. Oh man, like they even see the set card and like so many of them just are not prepared to think about what that might be. They're thinking of Mirror Force, they're thinking of like Threatening Roar, they're thinking of MST, Book of Moon, all these kinds of things you normally see in Frogs. And I know that like Treacherous Trapple is a card that some people play in Frogs already, but even so, it's like really not something that people are prepared for. They might even expect like an enemy controller instead. And in doing so, they probably do even play into it even more. I'm happy to have the faders there. I know that like post side, I tend to cut down on them, especially because, as I've always mentioned about fader, it loses to like all the things that people side in against Frogs, like Dynas, Fiends, Oppression, Deck Dev, all that kind of stuff. So overall, like, it's not like I'm suddenly done like a big 180 turn on fader. Like the vast majority of my builds that I have for Frogs just don't have faders, or maybe like max 1 or something. Like in Burn Frogs, I'm a fan of just having like 1 fader just for the option, but no, like fader is just like something really specific to this build. Next thing people were asking was about Dark Dust Spirit. So I had, or at least earlier in the deck profile, like 2 copies, and that actually really did put in a lot of work. Although I do prefer the enemy controller, mostly because actually, as I said, oh my god, I was opening or drawing or top decking Gajiltron like all day in every single game, like at least every single match. I feel like it was every single game, and I'm quite sure it was. I don't know. I didn't take a record of it, but I'm feeling like it was every single match at least. And because of that, I just actually do want a second enemy controller just to make drawing the Gajiltron like not bad at all, and in fact like quite good. Dark Dust Spirit in particular in this build, again because of the faders, like fader makes people commit to the board, and so Dark Dust Spirit punishes that really hard. But the other thing about Dark Dust Spirit, which is really special, and I don't think people necessarily pick up on this the first time they see the list, or even the second or third time they see the list, is that Dark Dust Spirit has a very special wording on it, which is not when it's tribute summoned, but when it's normal summoned. So that means that you can use it with Mausoleum, even if you don't have Frogs, even if you're cut off by Dyna or Vanity's Fiend or anything like that, you can still normal summon it anytime you like and wipe away all this stuff.
Yeah, the Dark Dust Spirit with Mausoleum is really deadly. The only thing you kind of have to be careful of is like how much life points you're paying. But like you said, you have those 3 faders, so makes perfect sense to me.
Other thing is just general field spell stuff. So people were wondering why do I set the field spells? Why don't I just like activate some? Like I do sometimes activate my Gear Town if I want to like normal summon a beast or an engineer or something. If I want to tribute summon Gajiltron, which is one tribute, I can come up. But most of the time you want to set the field spells. And that's for just the ruling that if you activate a new field spell over your previous field spell, then your old Gear Town that goes to the graveyard is going to miss timing. It's really important to do. Do you remember to do that?
Yes, that's correct. I know it's different if your opponent activates a field spell and it destroys yours. There's something there. There's a different ruling there. But if you activate one over your own...
That's really cool.
Yeah.
As Keegan already mentioned, Dust Tornado has some really good tricks that you can do with Gear Town, as well as with like opponent's Gear Town. If they happen to be like a mirror match or something, you can like target their field spell, kill it, and then set something. So it's really interesting to keep in mind. Oh yeah, so actually on the topic of enemy controller, this is something that actually my teammates only pointed out to me the other day because I really messed up in a War League game, and I had like Gajiltron plus Light and Darkness Dragon plus enemy controller set, and I had it set only because I was trying to play around the Shirako, because I knew that he could use Shirako effect to boost himself, and then I could chain link 3, the enemy controller to turn to defense. That way I could keep my setup rather than him just walking over my Light and Darkness Dragon. But in fact, what you can do is you can just tribute the Light and Darkness Dragon to steal their guy, and that means you get to keep your whole field, and you can just like, attack them for game next turn if you have the Gajiltron. So that's definitely something to keep in mind, and that's a big reason that I actually like the idea of just having 2 enemy controllers now.
Yeah, enemy controller gives you a lot of good tricks. I like that a lot, especially with the Light and Darkness setups, for sure.
People noticed a lot that on stream, or that during my games, they observed that I was using Mausoleum even when Light and Darkness Dragon was face up. And that's actually something really important to keep in mind if you do decide to use this deck, because you can really start to take control of the game if they can't get rid of your Light and Darkness Dragon that you have summoned with Mausoleum. So how this works is, Light and Darkness Dragon is only going to negate spells that are activated. So that means either flip face up or placed from your hand. In the case of Mausoleum, it's already there in the field. You can just use the effect already. Stuff like Black Whirlwind or Blaze Accelerator, stuff like that. That won't be negated by Light and Darkness Dragon. So same for Mausoleum. So you can still use the effect, pay the life points, and tribute summon another guy. And that's in fact really great when you have something like Gajiltron that you drew, which is kind of an example of what I'm saying. Like, it can be a death sentence sometimes, or it could be something that's really strong and it actually like lets you put even more pressure. So in this case, say you have Light and Darkness Dragon, Mausoleum, normal summon another Gajiltron, that will keep its effect that you can't use spells and traps when it attacks. And you can't even respond to the summon because Light and Darkness Dragon is there. So there you go. That's really important to know.
Yes. Also, one thing I want to touch up on, the reason why Light and Darkness Dragon won't negate spells that are already face up, or things like Gear Town that are sent to the graveyard, is because I believe it says when does it negate Gear Town getting sent to the graveyard? I think it doesn't, but I could be wrong. We might need to double check this ruling. But
one that activates in the grave. So, yes, if you're thinking like if you have Light and Darkness Dragon face up and you activate a new Gear Town and it like negates it and goes to grave, that actually won't trigger the Gear Town. So it's a very strange ruling that it negates the activation but it doesn't destroy it. And you would imagine that normally like in those kinds of cases that it would just destroy the card, but unfortunately it just says sent to the graveyard by game mechanics, which is so stupid. It's like the one time that happens.
This is interesting.
If it were to happen that way, then like
this is interesting.
If it were to happen that Gear Town would be destroyed, then Light and Darkness Dragon wouldn't be able to negate the grave effect, but unfortunately not.
I was thinking like if you go like set Gear Town and then set another Gear Town over it, like it still activates in the graveyard under Light and Darkness Dragon, correct?
Oh, that. Okay.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay, that is true. Yeah.
It's because of the wording on the card. It says when a spell card is activated, and then it says when a monster effect is activated, but it doesn't say when a spell effect is activated. So it doesn't negate face-up spell and traps. This is important to note for like not only your own spell and traps, but for your opponents as well. It won't negate things like Royal Oppression or Black Whirlwind, which are two of the main ones that really come up. I can't really think of any other ones, but for you in the sideboard, you also have Black Garden, which Light and Darkness Dragon won't negate if it's face up. Correct me if I'm wrong.
That's right. Okay, and the other thing actually related to that is, and this is something that's really cool, and if you get to pull this off, you just feel like a god, is that you can actually multiple summon, what am I trying to say? You can tribute summon, not even tribute summon, you can normal summon multiple Light and Darkness Dragon at the same time. So you can have one out already, you can use Mausoleum, and you can get a second one out. And that's like, it almost feels like a glitch that shouldn't happen, that you're not supposed to be doing this in normal gameplay. It's actually really cool, and it is a play that is like normally when you have it, you probably should do it. Only problem is like Light and Darkness Dragon is really complicated. It's possibly I can't think of a more complicated card than Edison.
Yeah, when you have two in play, there's like some really crazy rulings on that. I don't know if we want to get down that rabbit hole of rulings, but it is very interesting to say the least when you have two of them in play. Some crazy stuff happens.
Kind of just have to play it out to get a feel for it, because like if it's the first time you've ever done it, I'd say like get some practice with it, because there's two main things to keep in mind if you have double Light and Darkness Dragon on field, or even triple, is that the first thing is you're only going to be negating with one of them, and you get to choose which one you negate with. So that's actually really useful if one of them is getting really low that they might be able to attack over it by the next time they negate it, because you can kind of pass the negate on to another monster. It was kind of like in fact, Keegan, you play like Pokemon TCG. It's kind of like the same idea as using like a curse ability and like there's like a heal deck in old TCG, like with Chansies and stuff. I forget what it's called, but it's the same idea. Like you pass it all onto one guy just so the other guy doesn't have to like
Exactly.
kill range.
Yes, the Reuniclus deck. Yes, I know exactly what you're talking about. Yeah, that deck is sick.
Sure. Yeah. Same idea. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like, yeah, Light and Darkness Dragon
The other thing
basically
is
has
that
like a health stat, like you're saying, and that's its attack points, and you can sort of like manipulate the damage when you have two of them in play. That's really sick. That's a cool comparison.
perfect analogy. The last thing is that when they blow up, um, I'm trying to remember exactly the order, but you'll get the idea of it when you practice. That only one of them is going to summon, and I'm pretty sure it's the chain link one is the one you're actually going to summon, because they both blow each other up effectively, and that you have to think about what you're going to summon at the end. So make sure you plan those chain links carefully. I wish I could just say off the top of my head the way it works, but honestly, like it's kind of very niche interaction, but it's definitely something that can win you a game too. So keep that in mind.
Yes, yes, it is the one that happens chain link one that resolves.
Okay, so that's basically the FAQ section about the text.
Do you want to go ahead and walk through the matchups you had at the tournaments?
Yeah, so the first one, as I said, was it was versus Jose, a really good guy from locals. As I said, he had his deck all blinged out, and I was really worried about what he would do because he clearly had been playing the game for quite a while. So I ended up just opening like only frogs plus Gajiltron, so it was really hard to get my game moving from there. And game two, oh my god, I think I don't know if it was on stream, but actually no, that I'm thinking of the other match. I played a second game versus him later, and actually that is on stream, so you can actually see that game two that happened. It was totally wild, and he opened like charge, recharge, Lumina into Garoth, into like Wolf, and drew like 3 or something on turn 2. It's so cool to watch, and I was just like, you know what, like you got that game, man. that's really cool to watch. But the actual match one that I played against him, I think game 2, I think it's kind of a similar story. Like things just didn't get moving for me very quick. And I think I also committed into a Light and Darkness play that he was able to like really manipulate very well with his Lightsworn effects and stuff like that. So I think, yeah, that just didn't go well for me, match one. Yeah. So then game 2, I was against my friend Paul. His name is Ma. He has a YouTube channel called Ma, M-A period. And so he's a strong fairy player, and it was great to meet him in person. And it was actually like a very back and forth match. I was really impressed with it. And like even the game 1, like I had him like to within an inch of his life, and then suddenly like he managed to stall it out, and I was really afraid to commit just in case he had like a Herald plus Christia, because it was like really on the edge, and I was like, if I commit to this, I'm super in danger if there's a backup plan there. So I really had to stall it out turn after turn, and finally I won the game 1. Then game 2, I think he was able to really get things moving and like pressure me really quick with his fairies. I think I committed into something like an honest, and then like things went downhill from there. So that went pretty badly for me. And then game 3, I think it was also like a really protracted back and forth, and I ended up just like going for like a final push, one turn kill, and hoping it worked, and I think it worked. I'm pretty sure that's how it went down, something to that effect, and it really could have gone either way. I was like, damn, like even if he has like the Herald for this Light and Darkness Dragon, that can be like something that cracks you, because like suddenly like you're negating something and you feel like it's going to be negated. Suddenly they Herald your Light and Darkness Dragon, you have to wipe your whole field and they get their effect back. So that can be really dangerous. So definitely be conscious of playing around Herald, whether you're against Fairy or Fairy Lightsworn. But in the end, I got that game, and so on to match 3 was against it was against a guy called Richard. So Richard was on Blackwings. So here's the thing about Light and Darkness Dragon. It's a card that you really have to experience a lot of times before you know how to play around with it. So this guy is like, he was relatively new to Blackwings, I think. or at least in any case, he was new to playing against frogs. So this is something that's really a factor in picking up this deck for nationals, I think, because a lot of people are getting into Edison. Edison is getting really popular, and Light and Darkness Dragon can really just fry your head if you're not prepared for it. So this guy, like he had to read the card. My copy's in French as well, so I had to explain it to him too. And like what you should not do against Light and Darkness Dragon, whether you're playing against it or whether you're like, well, just in general, you should not just like drop card after card after card to drop the negates. You should be trying to play around it pretty smart with like using things chain link 3, like say like bait out negation with Mystical Space Typhoon, then Light and Darkness Dragon chain link 2, and then you use something like a Bottomless Trap Hole to get rid of it. Something like that. And that way you only use like 2 cards or maybe even 3 cards to get rid of it, as opposed to like dropping 4 cards to bait out all of the negations. That's just not a very efficient use of resources. And like I was like super happy that he dropped like heavy, mind control, brain control, all these things that I was like I could have been afraid of later that were just automatically gone because like he wasn't sure how to play around it. So that happened, and then I think that happened also game 2, so it was unfortunate for him. And if not for that, like I think he actually could have like done really well with the Blackwing deck, especially because he opened like Shura Whirlwind at one point, I'm pretty sure. So yeah, unfortunate. But at least like I made sure to, after the duel, go through all the interactions, tell him everything I knew about Light and Darkness Dragon. There's a lot to say about it. So like I was there for a while even, but he was very grateful to get that those tips and guidance. So then I went on to game 4, and I played against Fairy again, and this was a really interesting match. And I'm always really happy to play against Fairy, by the way. I think it's like, as frogs, I find it to be one of the most interesting matchups, and like one of the matchups where you always have a different game and you always have a puzzle to solve, and there's always a big risk of something that could happen, and you really have to play around it. So I find it just to be a very, I don't know, it's just such a fascinating matchup in my opinion. And I know that the Fairy players, they don't like always to play around frogs because you have to like dupe frogs that are annoying. I know Keegan actually likes to play against frogs because like he's pretty confident that like just sit on, like don't even attack the dupes, just like wait for torrential, just like wait for them to commit, and then make like a Roghnach into Christia play, and that's for sure like a legit way to handle the matchup too. Yeah,
like in that matchup, like that is one way to play it, but against these type of decks, like the one that you have on the screen right here, the game plan has to change like a shit ton because you have a lot of very aggressive, proactive ways to just not care about, Trench Tribute. Like you can just summon out a lad, and it's just like, oh no. So I'm interested to see how I do against decks like this.
Yeah, like we're gonna lab this matchup a lot, and especially if you check the side, like the Ancient Gear Beasts, that's something that like especially in the Ancient Gear matchup, the Fairies like are terrified of. So the fact that I'm employing this against Fairies is like an added level of just another layer of like annoying things to care about for the Fairy player against frogs. Yeah, like so this guy, his name is Guillermo. And so he was also a strong player, been playing for a while. He had some really nice rarities in his deck. I think game 1, as far as I can remember, I just launched like a big combo at him with like Gajiltron plus Light and Darkness Dragon. It's going to be a pretty common pattern that you see that with this deck, that sometimes you just like commit into it and like hope it works. If not, you probably have a backup plan. But a lot of the time, it really is just overwhelming for the opponent, like turn 1, to have to handle. So that's how it went down with the game 1. And then game 2 was super interesting, and here's where the enemy controller thing comes up. So he ended up that early on, I used a Caius on one of his monsters and left my Caius out face up. No traps, nothing else. So as you can imagine, as a Fairy player versus a Frog player, you're thinking, oh my god, that is a juicy setup for a Recruiter Crash into Christia. And that's exactly what happened. So he had like 3 or 4 cards left, and of course he has the Recruiter plus the Christia. So I imagine that might happen, of course. So you're always planning around these kinds of eventualities. So I thought, okay, I actually do have a game plan that can work if he does this. And I was really, really, really happy when he did in fact do that. So he lost another 4,000 life points, just crashing his recruiters. So he ended up ending on Honest. So, I think even Keegan says this a lot, like what you really want to do is you really want to make sure that you can get rid of their monster too, just to remove their foothold with your DDY lady.
Absolutely.
So you don't necessarily want to leave. Yeah. You don't necessarily want to leave their monster there for them to like tribute or for them to have like enemy controller with or anything like that. Like you just want to keep it as safe as possible. You want to like play it in such a way that you are the one dominating the field and you have control of the game. And leaving a monster on their field, it's a bit risky.
The only reason I would say The only other play that I would say besides getting DD Warrior Lady and just clearing the Caius there is you can, if you have the life points to spare, you can grab Herald 4th and you can crash the Herald and then Christia add back the Herald. And that's functionally similar, but you are exposing yourself to, spell cards. So definitely you want to clear the Caius in that instance. Continue what you're saying, though.
Yeah, and exactly. And I think that's in fact what was happening, because he bounced the Honest. Now, I didn't get to see his hand after the game because I think he was a bit worried that I might reveal some of his hot text to my teammates or something like that, which I totally respect, by the way. I absolutely, I would have talked to Cameron about all the things I saw in his fairy deck had they been paired against each other. So that's a very reasonable thing to do. But in any case, I didn't get to see why he bounced the Honest. I can only assume he must have had Herald in his hand as well. And in that sense, he would have also been playing around a potential Monarch, which is very strong. And I think that's actually a reasonable play. And not only that, but I can imagine that he might have actually been thinking of it a step higher and thinking okay, he has the field spells, he has the Mausoleum. What if he has Mausoleum plus Gajiltron and he decides to just walk over my Christia? What happens then? Well, then he had Honest for that. So I think that was actually a really heads-up play on his part. If he was thinking that far, I have no idea. I can't read his mind. But I feel at that moment, that was a really strong play on his part. In fact, as it turned out, as long as he had Herald. So, and as you can, as luck would have it, that's exactly what I did have. I had Mausoleum plus Gajiltron. So that was my plan, to just walk over the Christia with Gajiltron. But I had an extra layer of planning here because this is a ruling you should know. So here he goes. When you attack a monster with an Ancient Gear, what happens when a replay happens, and you can trigger a replay in a number of ways, and this is something that I don't know if you've interviewed Roghnach before, or if you've talked about his run on the channel, or even a user like DLW. There's a lot of Machina / Ancient Gear players who are really fond of using this line of play. If you attack with an Ancient Gear monster, and you remove their last monster, or you change the number of monsters on the field after the attack declaration, you can do a replay battle with your monster, and they still can't use any spells or traps. So let me illustrate what that would mean in this case. Say I were to attack his Christia with my Gajiltron, and he had a Book of Moon set. In that case, he might be thinking right now, okay, I have Honest. I don't have to worry about the Gajiltron. I can just save my Book of Moon right now. So say then I were to tribute my Caius after the attack declaration and try and steal his Christia, and that changes the number of monsters that are in the field. So that means that my Gajiltron has to do a replay battle, and I have to choose to attack him directly now. So in that case, even though it feels like a new attack, it's not actually. It's just declaring a new target for that same attack. So that means that the same limitation of not being able to use spells and traps, that still applies, and you still cannot use that Book of Moon. So the second the attack declaration happens, no matter if there's a replay or anything, you're dead. That there's nothing else that you can do. You have to rely on only your monsters. So my plan, therefore, was to just attack his Christia with the Gajiltron, steal his Christia after the attack declaration, and then go for game, because he only had 2,000 life points. So in the end, what happened is that he had that Book of Moon, and he decided to use it on the Gajiltron at the start of the battle phase. So that's a very reasonable thing to do. He was worried about probably, in fact, precisely that play. I think he's actually a very heads-up player. I think, given how he played, I can only infer that he actually, had a very strong play style and, knew a lot of these rulings. And you can say the same about a lot of the players who were there. It was a very, very high-level competition. You could tell a lot of people there were there for a long time. They knew a lot of their stuff. In any case, Gajiltron was face down, so none of that spell and trap stuff was applying. So what I had to do is just go for the enemy controller, go all ham in on this. He had 3 back row at one point, so I was like, geez, you know what? He probably has a Solemn. I don't know what's going to happen if he Solemns my enemy controller. I might have to just hope for a good top deck here. I was really, really freaking out. But in the end, I don't know what happened. I don't know what he had set, but I was able to steal his Christia and go for game. So I was really happy with that, because had I lost that game, I don't know. That would have been really risky for me, only having 2 wins, 2 losses at that point. Or maybe I think it was, 2 wins, 2 losses, yeah. But in any case, that would have been really horrible. So I ended up just taking that match, and that could have gone either way. I didn't get to find out what he had set. He was very secretive about it, which is absolutely, I think, in fact, at the Nationals, you probably should be like that. I think, don't necessarily be buddy with all the opponents. I think if you have a cool tech, I think you should keep it down. I think you should I know I'm doing the opposite here because I want to spread the word about this deck, but I'm saying if you have something really cool that you don't want your opponents in the room to know about, that's totally on you. You can keep that secret, and I think you should.
Yeah, I agree. It's kind of like when you play poker and you fold and you don't show your hand. Like, that's basically it. You just don't want people to know what's up, you know? Even if you end up cutting that deck later, it's just, there's no real reason to share it unless you're like going for content like we kind of are, or if you're going for coverage like we kind of are here with this video.
Then I went on to round 5. So I had, by that point, a 3-1 record. So my next opponent was Pete Navarro. So honestly, I can't say I know a lot about Pete Navarro's history, but he's known as like a really strong player from the past. I really should look into him because I think like judging by just his like general demeanor and his confidence and his friendliness and everything, I feel like he's like a real strong player that's been around for a long time doing really cool things. But there you go. He was a very, not just in the game itself, but outside the game, he was a very strong presence. And I think that's actually like a very important thing to know as well about like body language and about like the way you talk to your opponent and stuff like that. I think like you can really start to set the scene and even like get in your opponent's head that way. And I feel like he was really like taking the lead there in a certain way. I think there's something really special about the way he started that game. So I have to say that. Honestly, remember the general trend of the first 2 games was kind of like he was able to dismantle my stuff and to construct kind of like a one-turn kill with all the zombie cards and pick through my weaknesses and like get in for game. Whereas on the other hand, one of the games I was able to construct a one-turn kill, dismantle his stuff, something to that effect. That's as much as I can remember. The game 3 though, this was really interesting. So in the side deck, you can see that I have the Ancient Gear stuff and I also have the Black Garden. So these were really key players in what happened next. So you can imagine that Ancient Gear Beast is a really strong card in that matchup. You can even just activate the Gear Town, straight away go for Ancient Gear Beast, and shut down all of their recruiter stuff, shut down their Raikos or their literally any other text they've got that involves the graveyard, at least for the first couple of turns. So that's a really strong card to have in that matchup, as well as Ancient Gear Engineer is a really strong card for shutting down anything like Mask or Rug or like even Zombie World sometimes that they have. And I know Zombie World isn't really that great against this deck because of all the field spells, but you get the point. What happened was he ended up getting really grinded down by my Black Garden because I had like an opening involving like Ancient Gear Beast plus Engineer because I had both the field spells and ending on Black Garden. So I was really confident that like unless he has something really specific to get rid of my Beast and my Engineer, like say a Brain Control or a Cyber Dragon or something, to get rid of both of them, then I feel like there's not really much way for the zombie player to get set up and to like beat over the Black Garden or to get rid of these guys or to do anything really, because there's nothing that like a Bottomless Trapple or a Deep Prison or anything, like any monster could handle this with. In the end, he did have the Brain Control, so that allowed him to dismantle the Engineer at least, so that was a really good start. And then he tributed for, oh no, he ended up crashing the Engineer with a Pyramid Turtle and then sinking with the Ancient Gear Beast, so that was really strong. So that meant that I was left with some tokens, and he set some back row. And what happened next, I was like, I really hope this comes up sometime this day, because like it didn't happen during the ribbit, but I just knew that no matter who I was playing against, whether it was like a really experienced player or someone who just was starting with Edison, I felt like no one was going to see this coming, and I was right. Like it didn't matter. What I did was I tributed one of the Rose tokens for my Caius. So I took this real slow. Black Garden's face up. You might be able to see where I'm going with this. He had his Colossal Fighter, so I'm like, okay, do you have Solemn Judgment? He said, no, I don't. Or at least that he's not using it. So I said, okay, Caius, target the Colossal Fighter. So I left it kind of open. I wasn't like, it wasn't like a period at the end of that sentence. It was like, do you have anything? And then he says, okay, immediately flip pulling the rug. I'm like, aha, I got him. Yes. So Chainlink 1, Caius. Chainlink 2, Black Garden. Let's go. Both of them are mandatory effects. Both of them trigger on the normal summon. I can choose the order. Black Garden's Chainlink 2. There's no way you can chain the rug. And he's like, you got me. So he put the rug back face down, Colossal Fighter's gone. So you can imagine I'm in a really strong position because of this. Like, that's really, really strong. Like, he can't fight over my tokens because Black Garden really shuts down a lot of stuff, really slows him down. He would have to have like a really crazy combo with like Roghnach or something to really gain momentum here, but even then, like all the monsters he summons would be halved in their attack, so it would be really easy for me to dismantle that later. So what ended up happening was there's back and forth. He ended up actually having to deprison one of my tokens. So I was really like, oh my god, like he's down to some really low resources. All I gotta do is just like drop a Light and Darkest Dragon on him somehow, or a Gajiltron, or whatever it is, and I can really take control of this game. So what ended up happening, And this is absolutely a cautionary tale for anyone who is going from online play to in real life play, because the game is a bit different. I gotta admit, there's some things you really gotta keep in mind, and you gotta take it slow. So what I did was, throughout this back and forth of me passing back, him drawing some cards, I drew into Gear Town plus Terraforming plus Light and Darkness Dragon. He's got like 2,000 life points. And I know that of his 3 sets that are on the board, one of them is the Dead Pulling the Rug. I know exactly where it is. I know it's not going to hit anything that I summon. And I just got to worry about the other 2 sets he's got. So it's real simple, actually. Like, in fact, it's really, really easy for me to just score a win here. All I got to do is Gear Town plus Mausoleum plus Light and Darkness Dragon. And before I get the Light and Darkness Dragon, now unfortunately he had banished the yugioh. I don't remember how. It might have been a Caius, might have been a Crow. I don't remember how. Book of Life, something like that. But I still had the Engineer left, because I sided out one of the yugioh for the Engineer. So in doing so, I could just summon the Engineer. I could even just like take a turn to clear through his back row a little bit before later summoning the Light and Darkness Dragon. That would be fine. Same thing, really. So unfortunately, what I ended up doing, I thought through my combo. I thought, okay, it goes like this. Gear Town, set Gear Town, set Mausoleum, summon the thing. All right, great. Terraforming, let's go. What I need is, I need Gear Town into Mausoleum. Great, I need Gear Town. Okay, let's get Gear Town. You can imagine this did not go very well. I do not need 2 Gear Towns. I need a Gear Town plus a Mausoleum. And my immediate response was to go, crap, I've messed this up. All I can do now is I can just rely on my opponent's kindness out of the depth of his heart just to grant me some leniency here and to be a really nice opponent and to be really charitable and just allow me to get the right field spell. So that's what I did. I said, oh, sorry, I got the wrong field spell. Do you mind if I just get the right target? And he said, aha, well, sorry, man. It's gone to your hand. It's resolved. It's in your hand. There's nothing you can do. It's a really good lesson to learn. Honestly, like, you can say, like, okay, I had the game in the bag. Yeah, okay, my deck performed really well. My deck had everything it needed to win. But if you're not taking your time, and if you're just assuming that your opponent is going to be charitable to you, and if you're just, like, not really thinking through the exact sequence you're going to play, then you can be punished. And I think, honestly, you should be punished. And that's exactly what happened. So he said, no, not allowed, unfortunately. And I think that is a really important lesson for you to take as well, for anyone watching this to take, especially to nationals. So don't worry about, like, I know there's a lot of people online who are like, oh, well, that's just like not good sportsmanship, or that's just sharking, or that's just like, it's not actually for real. And there's several reasons why you can say that. First of which being, you can call over the judge if you're not sure. Like, if you feel like there's something that's like a bit off and you're just like, I don't feel good about doing this, but at the same time, like, that's just what has to happen, then don't worry about it. Just call over the judge. And if you want to say, like, it wasn't necessarily my choice to do it, it was just what the judge decided, that's okay. So that's really important. And honestly, like, here's the funny thing. Like, I knew that was going to happen. Like, if you were to call over the judge, of course he would say, yeah, you added the card, you can't add the other card. Yeah, so just remember that. Like, sometimes your opponents, if they're asking you to be nice to them, sometimes in their head, they know that they've lost. They know that you have them by the balls. They know that, but they're just trying to see if you're going to be nice and give them some breathing room that they don't deserve, actually. They actually don't. So remember that. Like, hold your ground when you can, and if in doubt, call a judge. That's a really important lesson. So I lost that match, by the way. I did. So I was going with a 3-2 record, and so I really, really needed that last game to clinch me out and to get me into potentially the top cut. Because we didn't know. Like, there could have been a bunch of draws, for example, that would have really ruined my chances to get there with an X2 record. But I just said, you know what, like, okay, I'll play out the next game. There's no point dropping, obviously. I'm having a good time. It's a great place. Like, there's great players. I'm really excited, actually. I'm like, you know what? I can win this one. You never know. So, who am I faced against? Of course, what I believed to be the one Gladiator Beast player in the room. If you have played Frogs before on any serious level, you know that that can be a real challenge. That is conventionally considered to be one of the hardest matchups for Frogs, for a lot of reasons, and for a lot of good reasons, too. Retiari banishing all the Treeborns, that's something that, like, almost no decks in the format can do. Chariot is something also extremely unique, and not only does it shut down your Monarchs, it shuts down your Frogs, it shuts down your hand traps, it shuts down, like, everything. If they open Chariot, then a lot of times, like, you just got unlucky, man, and you just gotta go to the next game, because, like, if they keep looping it, then what can you do? You're just not fast enough to beat that. Unless you have like a really specific combo, like Soul Exchange plus Monarch or something. Normally it's not going to happen, and just have the card and you just got to move on. So that's normally how that matchup goes. But if you remember all the things I talked to you about earlier in terms of the fundamentals of this deck and how it works differently to other Frog decks and what's got that really sets it apart, those are all the same things that really mark it out in the Gladiator Beast matchup. I'm not exaggerating here. This is by far the strongest Frog deck for the Gladiator Beast matchup, and that's a huge litmus test in terms of like what the deck is capable of post-side in general. So what happened? It was pretty, I will say, lopsided in terms of how the draws went for me. I will admit that a lot of the things just really happened to be in my favor. It felt like there was just someone up there giving me all the right things that I needed. Like I drew the right Monarch for the Soul Exchange. I drew like the right field spell for the Light and Darkness Dragon. I didn't draw Giltron very much, or at least only maybe once the whole match or something like that. And even then I didn't care. I didn't draw a whole lot of frogs, all these kind of things. That really added up for me. But at the same time, like the fundamentals of this deck versus Gladiator Beast is unmatched. There's nothing else. And like draw your attention there to Giltron. Imagine you are a Gladiator Beast player and you see this drop on the field. You don't have bottomless trap pool. What are you going to do? You can't defend your monster. You can't use like Mirror Force, Prison, not even Shrink in the damage step. You can't even do that. Like you are really extremely vulnerable to this card, and not even like a Book of Moon can help you because it has such a high defense value. Like it completely solos that matchup. And not only that, but like dropping a Light and Darkness Dragon on them is super hard too. Like unless they have like some combination involving Chariot, but even then you might revive like a Monarch or something, and suddenly they're still left with a big monster on the field. And on top of that, we got like Faders, we got triple Soul Exchange. We have so many things here that like just keep them off of their actual game plan of attacking you for advantage. It's really hard for them to do that. And even like, it wasn't just even in this match, like I was playing against Cam, and Cam obviously is one of the strongest and oldest Gladiator Beast players in the Edison scene. We were playing some casual games right before we left for the rave, and I was like, I wasn't even taking it seriously. I was just like going through this as fast as possible. I was like just playing random things from my hand. I won't say I made even that many mistakes, but like I wasn't taking it seriously, and I just like 2 matches in a row I destroyed him with this thing. And for a Frog player, for a Frog deck, that's like, I don't know, that's so unheard of. Like I know Cam is really successful with Diva Frogs against Gladiator Beasts in recent tournament performances. There's a lot of really strong Frog players like Dimitri or Sonny or Mr. Sultai, all these players who have like really taken on Gladiator Beasts in tournaments and have really come out successfully. And that's for a lot of reasons. That's for like all the practice they've done. That's for all the theory they've put into it, all that kind of stuff. But at the same time, like some days you really just can get like really horrible hands that don't match. Whereas this deck, at least that can happen, sure, but the majority of the time, like you do still have like a gear down play. You have like the natural advantage against that deck, which is really, really crazy. So suffice it to say, I 2-0'd that guy, and I couldn't even believe it, to be honest. I was like, I knew on paper that I had those fundamentals, but I didn't believe in practice it would happen. And he was a strong Gladiator Beast too, of course. Like he took Cameron on his hero beat to a game 3, and a really close game 3. Like I saw Cam top decking some stuff, and I was like, damn, I'm so glad you top decked that, because like, I don't know, like it could have gone either way. And that's not a matchup that should go either way, because that's historically like even one of Gladiator Beast's worst matchups, hero beat. That's in fact like the gatekeeper deck that's keeping Gladiator Beast out of the meta. My point there is he was a strong Gladiator Beast player. I was able to just completely wipe him with this Frog deck. That should say something about the strengths of the Frog deck. Okay, so with all that said, it was 4-2 X2 record. There ended up being 4 X2 players who made top cut, which is really rare. That's like so, like normally in these 64-man tournaments, it's like 1 or 2 players, maybe 3. I don't even know how the math works out, but 4 is a lot. So I ended up just scraping by to 8th place. And that was because the people who I lost against, that being Jose with his Lightsworns, as well as Pete Navarro with his Zombies, those were 2 really strong players who also made it to top cut. So I'm pretty happy with that as well. Like the only players I lost to were also really strong players. On to the top 8. And at this point, I think I might even just leave it to you, the viewer, to go to the channel called Playtest IRL, where all the 3 matches are uploaded. So that was top 8, me versus Lightsworns. Top 4, me versus Hero Frogs, and then top 2, the finals, me versus yugioh. So all those are uploaded on the channel in full detail. You can see everything that went on in those games. And I was pretty happy with how the deck performed in all those games.
Good stuff.
Yeah, there was that's for the matchups.
Good stuff. Well, thank you so much for joining me. Do you have any closing thoughts on the deck as a whole, or is there anything else you want to touch on before we get into
Yeah, actually, because I was thinking about this because people are going to ask me, and I think why am I featuring this deck? Like, why did I bring this deck to Ribbit? Why did I bring this deck to the PS5 tournament? Why did I bring this deck to War League? Why did I bring this deck to the Edison World Championship qualifier? Why am I suddenly all of a sudden bringing like the same deck 4 times in a row after having like switched up my decks and brought like so many random crazy things to various tournaments? I'm just jumping around back and forth, and suddenly now I'm set on this one thing. So like people are gonna ask me like, oh, I mean, are you gonna say like this is like the best deck in Edison or like the best Frog deck in Edison at the moment? I mean, well, yeah, definitely. I genuinely do think that, and I know that might surprise you to think that I'm being so, authoritative about this, or that I'm being like, that I'm just, saying this absolutely is the best thing. But I have to say that's based on everything I've brought up with you earlier. So if we circle back to our conversation, I brought up the fact that first of all, this is the Frog deck that has the highest ceiling of any Frog deck. So it's got like the triple gear town, it's got like soul exchange, it's got like the potential to just totally ignore Treeborn and just like summon a Light and Darkness Dragon and just do its own thing regardless of the opponent. It's very proactive. It's got a massively high ceiling. It can randomly just like one-turn kill the opponent, whether that be with Mobius plus 2 field spells on turn 2, or just like a 2-turn clock with like a Gajiltron plus Light and Darkness Dragon, or even post-side like Gajiltron plus Vanity's Fiend or something. There's a lot of ways in which like this deck just puts out so much damage immediately and makes your opponent absolutely terrified to leave an open board. Because that's classically, of course, one of the problems with Frogs. Not anymore, of course. Now everyone's figured that out, that with popular decks like Diva Frog, Junk Frog, Hero Frog, all these things, you can no longer leave an empty board versus Frogs. But I think this deck just really takes it to the next level. That my opponents were absolutely terrified. They told me this of whenever I activate a field spell, they're like, oh my god, I might actually die this turn. I'm not prepared for this. Oh my god. And they just happened not to die. So I just didn't have all like the exact ingredients to kill them, but they knew like this deck was capable of it. And that's something that's really unheard of for a Frog deck. I know you have like Junk Warrior combos, you have like Stratos plus Swap plus Miracle. Those are ways of like killing the opponent out of nowhere for sure. But this deck does it even faster. It can do it immediately on turn 1 without any Frog setup whatsoever. You don't need like a Treeborn in the grave. You don't need like a Swap Frog in the grave. Anything.
One of the hardest parts for the other Frog decks is like you always have to take a turn off to get Treeborn in the grave. So you're always down a full turn and you're always like playing from behind. This deck can make up that turn like so easily with Gear Town, with Battle Fader, with Treacherous being a literal Regeki. There's so many ways for this specific list to make up that extra turn that like the other Frog decks kind of lack. So I really do think that you're onto something here. I think you have certainly cooked.
And then following on, the last thing from that from the fact that we don't have to care about Treeborn is that in itself makes this deck incredibly hard to side against. I've always said this about Frog decks. Like I always am building my Frog decks around the opponent's side. I'm always like, look, have as many outs for vanities as you can. Previously, I would have been on like so many discard traps for that reason, or I would have been on like so many discard traps for Black Whirlwind or Red Mid, or for like any number of threats that can just steal a game from you if you let them. And in that same way, whether that be like Mask, Rug, Dyna, Kaiku, Rug, all these kinds of things that people stereotypically side against Frogs, we don't have to care about them. I honestly just like, I was not worried about a single one of those. I suppose the worst one necessarily would be like Vanity's Fiend, but even then, like I didn't drop a single game to it, the entire thing, which is crazy because normally you do, honestly, like especially in the Frog mirror. Now I know like this does open up, for example, Cyber Dragon for these machines, for Gajiltron. That becomes something that is actually a bit of a threat for one thing. There's a couple others that end up, a couple other cards that people tend to bring in that can become a little bit stronger. But in general, like people had no idea what to side against. And honestly, like I even brought like 2 other Frog decks to this event. One of them was kind of a joke, but the other one was a really serious deck that I have like almost topped with before. And I was like, you know what, like this could be the event for this deck. But in the end, like after testing with Cameron, with Keegan, with Murray at the hostel, or what am I saying, at the Airbnb, as well as like the games we played at the locals the money matches we played, and so on before the event, I just felt like this deck is pretty much strictly better at this point. And
Yeah.
until I find a better frog deck that has these qualities, or like that a way to improve this deck, or like a way to handle maybe like the fact that we draw Gachiltron like half the games or something. I don't know. Like at the moment, that's how I feel. This deck is one of the strongest, and I do hope that people, start to pick it up, and not only that, but just to copy it, but to take the principles that I've adopted here and why I've built this deck the way it is, and to make their own decks. Because, as I've always said, frog decks in Edison are so underexplored. You can build pretty much any frog deck you want with any engine you want. And as long as you have the right reasons to do it, and you have the right meta concerns in mind, or you have the right like side deck cards to counter side against in mind, that kind of thing, you can do really well. And honestly, like the frog decks that have topped this year, there have been so many different ones. You can't even really count them, and they've been so different. They've been so varied. Everyone has their own style. Especially like even the most recent frog deck that topped, the #1 player, the guy from the Ribbit. Like honestly, I would not even use Future Fusion. I would not even use like Lightning Dark Dragon without Mausoleum or stuff like that. But you can do well with anything, as long as you understand the decks, you understand your opponents. Yeah, like for sure you can do well. So that's what I would leave you with.
Hell yeah.
For the interview.
Yeah, no, thank you so much for joining me. And if you guys want to check out Roghnach, you can find him in the places we mentioned earlier in the video. Thank you so much for showing off this really incredible deck. It's definitely something I'm interested in trying out moving forward. And we'll see you guys in the next vid. Peace.